What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So it is now official that Caleb Williams is headed to USC after leaving Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley last season. He will potentially be bringing even more transfers in with him to USC, although it'll probably be a little bit before we see that, probably wait till post-spring practice. But Mario Williams is a guy who's already joined him as well in flipping from Oklahoma. So let's go ahead, let's talk about the immediate impact of this Caleb Williams move, and then also the optics around the situation and the long-term impact of this on college football as a whole. So for the immediate on-the-field impact of the Caleb Williams news, it's an absolutely game-changing thing for USC. They go from a sleeping giant of a program before hiring Lincoln Riley to now a program that was going to be dangerous in a year or two once Riley got his, got everything under him, got his full recruiting system in, got his staff built, got a little experience out there, and got everything set up. To now, they're a program that could legitimately contend and compete for the playoff in year one under Lincoln Riley. They have absolutely destroyed the transfer portal with numerous additions on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball, adding guys like Mario Williams, Shane Lee, Travis Dye, Latrell McCutcheon, and many, many more, now including Caleb Williams, who is by far the most valuable player we've seen in this entire era of the transfer portal, in my opinion. USC will definitely be the top team in the Pac-12 now next year. They probably would have been regardless, but now that is cemented for sure. The only teams who really have much of a shot at competing with them, in my opinion, are going to be Utah and Oregon, but Oregon has a year one head coach in Dan Lanning. They have a lot of other issues to work out with staff overhaul, things with a brand new head coach, and getting the roster back up. They have a lot of guys leaving it. Oregon's not going to be quite ready to compete next season, I don't think, and they're not bringing in the same caliber of players currently that USC is. And then Utah is just never going to be able to compete and match USC talent-wise, just at a level consistently enough to compete with them on the field year in, year out. Now that Lincoln Riley's at USC, Utah is to me similar to like an Iowa or something along those lines, where they're a very well-coached team. They're a very disciplined team. They're not the kind of team that you want to play. They're always going to be very physical, but they're just not going to recruit at that elite level of college football. They're not really going to be competitive against teams like a USC has the potential to be, but against teams of like the Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, that sort of caliber of team, Utah is not going to, at least consistently, being able to compete with that. And especially now that Lincoln's out there in the Pac-12, I expect Utah to struggle even a little bit more in recruiting because he's going to be recruiting a lot of the same geographical areas that they do. So, to me, like I said, USC going to be far and away the top dog in the Pac-12 now. The offense alone for them next season is going to be absolutely filthy. And now with Caleb Williams, Riley can literally just transfer over his playbook that he was running with him at Oklahoma to keep things consistent. He can bring the same thing over to USC, keep the consistency, keep some continuity for both him and for Caleb. They get to continue to work together. And it's very similar to what he's been doing in the past. Obviously, it's not going to be the exact same, but like I said, very similar. They can bring a lot of the same concepts over. He was going to do that regardless, but now keeping the exact same quarterback just makes that even more apparent and makes that a lot easier to do because you don't have any personnel changes to account for. As far as Caleb Williams' skill set, I mean, he can really do anything that you're going to ask him to. He's a legitimate dual-threat quarterback. He can run extremely effectively. He has a very, very good arm as well. He can throw off-platform very well, throw out of weird arm angles. He's very accurate, especially on downfield throws. He can improvise very well, and he can really just do anything that you could imagine asking your quarterback to do. Now, he's still young. He still has room to grow, especially with more technical things, but he's outstanding. I mean, just look at what he did last season at Oklahoma, and that was as a true freshman in his first real time playing, with a lot of controversy around the team about him and Spencer Rattler, and he came in, he didn't miss a beat, he played outstanding basically every game he was in, at least for freshman standards, but really has a chance to be a Heisman-level contender next year. Outstanding talent for USC. Basically, like I said, whatever you can imagine a quarterback being able to do or what you would want them to be able to do on the field, he can do most all of those things, especially in Lincoln Riley's system. He's run it before. He's going to be outstanding. He's going to be incredibly dangerous there. And like I said, they're going to probably dominate the Pac-12 with the offense alone. They're going to have to get their defense a little bit better than Riley has had in years past at Oklahoma. and even are a little bit better than what USC currently has. If they want to be a legitimate playoff level competitor who can make a push in the postseason at least, they could probably get to the postseason, assuming they don't have any big slip-ups, just based off of that offense alone. But I think once they get there, you're going to run into other teams of similar caliber. And, you'll need your defense to at least be competent at that point. And that's what has gotten Lincoln Riley in a lot of trouble in the past, is the defenses have just never been good enough for him. Regardless, though, this move solidifies USC as an elite team next year already. They're going to be an immediate contender just due to the insane amount of talent influx to the team this year off the transfer portal. It's going to be kind of ridiculous, and it's a it's just a sign of the new era in college football with the transfer portal. Now, as for off-the-field implications, this could lead to a lot more players wanting to come to USC than there already were via the portal, like I kind of said earlier, which would help USC fill out their roster and build up the legitimate depth even more, which is currently the only real issue I see with them next year, is that while their high-end talent and their starting-level players are all very good, they're very talented, they're already elite at most positions there, with a few exceptions and stuff. But for the most part, they're pretty elite along the initial starters. Their depth isn't there yet. Riley hasn't been there long enough to really build that. And what he has built is through the portal, and you normally can't bring in enough portal guys to really build a lot of valuable depth that way. He's going to build an elite team over time for sure, regardless. But he hasn't had time to really establish that yet and establish his full team. So they could add a few more guys that way. The portal's probably going to calm down a little bit now as enrollments and stuff are really becoming official. And if you're going to enroll for spring classes, you kind of need to already be in. But after spring practice, everything tends to open back up. You see a lot more portal activity, and you'll see some throughout the summer as well. And so that group, they could really use the Caleb Williams move to effectively leverage some of those players there. He is an attractive guy. A lot of people want to play with him. He's the kind of quarterback that is very attractive for other receivers, running backs, even defensive players, because they know they're going to get the spotlight in big-time games, and they're going to be a very good team with him at quarterback. He's the kind of guy that can bring that to your program, and so I expect to see that, at least to some extent. But like I said, Riley was going to build an elite team next year regardless of if he brought in Williams or not this year. This move just allows him to speed that process up, and it could allow for even more momentum in recruiting both the high school and through the portal. And I think with high school, the way you can see more momentum come out is that if he does manage to produce a playoff appearance in year one at USC with Caleb Williams at the helm, or a national championship, but not even that really, just a playoff appearance, I think that would just add that extra boost to them. Everybody already kind of expects that that's the trajectory for Lincoln Riley at USC, but to see the evidence of it on the field gives you a certain level of validity to your recruiting pitch, can really help in the high school ranks at the very least. And that can gain a lot more buzz and momentum around the program to start recruiting at an even more elite level and dominate really just even sooner, though, because Riley already generated that kind of buzz there. And at USC, there's already a lot of momentum. So I don't think it's something that's going to completely change the trajectory of the program long term, because they were already on such an upward trajectory with Riley, but it's something that can really boost it to some extent, kind of take that next step. And I think really what it does is it just moves the timeline up a little bit more. If Riley can lock down California in recruiting in the long run, it can really change the entire shape of college football right now. Not just because it's going to obviously improve USC's roster if they can lock down that talent, but because of what it does to the other teams that rely on California talent. Bryce Young's from California, for example. DJ Ugalele's from California, for example. Clemson, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Ohio State, all these teams all recruit California pretty heavily at this point. And locking that down at USC, like I said, obviously helps them, but it hurts those other schools too, and it can sort of balance things out. The same thing can be said of the state of Florida, with Florida State, Miami, and Florida now all starting to kind of try to figure things out in the recruiting end. If any of them can get more of a foothold in Florida, then it has the same effect. But USC has a much better shot at doing it in California than I think those schools do in Florida, at this point at least. So that's something to watch. That alone can really shift things around, just based off recruiting balance of power. But the other long-term thing I want to touch on was the balance of power in college football, and I don't mean between universities. I mean between coaches and the players and the universities, how they all interact and how the power is held between those entities there. It used to be that universities held most of, if not all of the power. The coaches would be second there because they can kind of leave whenever they wanted within reason, and so they had some amount of leverage. And then the players were at the bottom of the totem pole. They were sort of at the mercy of the universities and the program. Now, the transfer portal has empowered players in a lot of ways, giving them a lot more leeway and giving them the ability to sort of control the landscape of the sport to a much greater extent than they used to. But it has done that same thing in a much bigger way, in my opinion, to the coaches. Lincoln Riley has just now proven that a coach can absolutely decimate their old school's roster while rebuilding a different school in just one offseason. Coaches' power and value now is not just what they can provide their current school, but what they could do if they left that school. So now the other school, the university has to sit there and consider, if our Lincoln Riley or whoever your university's coach is leaves and goes to a rival school, what does that mean for us? That's not just, we have to get a new head coach and a new staff. That's, we could lose our starting quarterback and our best receivers and our starting running back and half of our recruiting class, our entire staff. We could lose all of that, and he could take it over there with him based off of what we provided him at this university. And that is a huge power dynamic shift there. The coaches now, people complain about coach salaries being too high. I think they're going to go up because coaches can now demand much, much more exorbitant things because they have the power to go somewhere else and completely decimate your current school. And that is huge. I don't like it personally, but that is kind of the college football world that we're in right now. What do you want a university to do? What can a university do to prevent their elite coach from going to that rival school, bringing all of their players and coaches, leaving their old university in shambles while they have to try to rebuild just while their rival school that this new coach went to is rebuilding? What can the university do to prevent that from happening to them? They can't really do anything other than just try to appease their current coaches, which is where that balance of power has really shifted because now the university has to do everything in their power to keep their coaches happy if they have a good coach, and that's completely shifted. Whereas in the past, you wanted to, but if the coach got too pushy, you're just like, look, dude, we're a great program, we'll find someone else, we'll be okay. That's not as true anymore. It's true of some of the most elite level blue blood programs, but not as much as you might have thought in the past, and a lot more leveraged on the coach's side of that argument now. Now, let's briefly talk about the optics around this situation. I personally don't like this at all because a lot of the balance of power aspects I just mentioned before, where now a coach can completely deplete his old university's entire roster and staff in one offseason. Even in the NFL, where coaches and players can kind of move around a lot more, and I see a lot of people trying to make the analogy of the transfer portal to free agency, but it's not a good analogy. It's not an apt comparison because, like I said, even in the NFL where players and coaches can move around, they can't just bring their entire team with them. Even if they bring the staff, they can't bring, they can't bring their quarterback. If Zach Taylor were to leave the Bengals, he can't bring Joe Burrow with him. Joe Burrow's on a contract. It doesn't work that way. In college, you can. You can bring your players with them as long as they're willing to come with you. And a lot of them are because it makes sense for them. If they are with an elite coach that they know is going to get them to the league, it may not be the loyal thing to do, but those guys have to look out for themselves. And so I don't like that. It's not great for the sport, in my opinion. I don't think it's good at all for the sport when every single offseason, almost every single program in the country could lose their entire staff, most of their good players, all in one offseason to a rival school, and them all instantly play, have no consequences, and just go dominate somewhere else. Everybody wants to make fun of Oklahoma fans right now because they're being hurt by this and they're not able to get over it, and there's a bunch of stuff out there about people making fun of Oklahoma fans, but can you really blame them? If this happened to your favorite team, how would you feel? You would probably feel the same way. And it's not like Oklahoma is some poverty-level program with no talent or history or resources. They're legit blue blood in college football, and if this can happen to them, it can happen to essentially every program out there in America. I personally don't like that. I think that's bad for the sport as a whole. But before everybody goes crazy on me about that, I'm not hating on Caleb Williams doing what's best for him in his career. And while I personally find the way that Riley has handled this entire situation very off-putting, and if I was a player, I wouldn't want to play for him, I also can't really blame him for doing what's best for him either. I'm just saying I don't like that this is possible to begin with. I don't like the system. And I think it's really bad for college football as a whole. And as a Georgia fan, this doesn't really directly affect me at all that much. So don't think it's because I have some weird allegiance to Oklahoma or anything like that either, because I don't. Like I said, I just think it's a dangerous slope for college football at this point. Anyway, though, that'll do it for this video. Let me know down below what you guys think about the Caleb Williams move, both on the field and off of it, what you think it means for college football as a whole going forward. Leave a like on the video if you have made it this far in, because it helps out the channel tremendously. Also, subscribe for more college football content in the future, as I will continue to upload very regularly. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.